A deep, uneven thump echoed through the dead of night, jarring the small cabin.
The air inside was thick and warm.
It was a sound entirely out of place, not the typical settling of wood, but something heavier.
The ranger, Alex, instantly snapped awake. Every neck ending. He lived alone, miles deep inside the snow-covered reserve, and anything capable of making that noise in the dark.
His mind raced, cycling through every massive nocturnal predator that called this frozen wilderness home.
Another thud. Softer this time, but unmistakably urgent.
It was rhythmic, almost intelligent. Alex reached for his utility light.
His hand trembled, not from the cold he was currently protected from, but from pure, raw adrenaline.
He moved slowly toward the heavy door, the thin wooden structure suddenly feeling like tissue paper. He knew the risk. Stepping outside his defined safety zone in the presence of a predator was a potentially fatal mistake. But this was different. He peered through the small, reinforced window. It was a ghost of the forest. Its coat absorbed the scarce light, making it a shapeless void against the stark, pale timber and the drifts of snow. And then she paused, her luminous eyes locking onto the window where Alex stood. The primal fear was immediate. A black leopard is nature's perfect engine of efficiency, an apex predator.
And here she was, less than 3 feet from his face, enduring the brutal cold.
Yet there was no hostility in those eyes. They weren't hunting eyes. They were wide with a desperation that cut through Alex's terror.
And then he saw it. The unmistakable, swollen, heavy belly.
Of a creature struggling desperately through the final, perilous stages of pregnancy. She lowered her head, not in a threat display, but in a profound, silent plea.
Alex felt a gut-wrenching shift in his perception. This was no ordinary encounter. This was an appeal.
If she had been capable of standing on 2 legs, she would have been knocking louder, begging more fiercely.
It took every ounce of his training, but he forced his hand away from the emergency flare and instead reached for the locking bolt. He opened the door, just a crack, letting a searing blast of winter air into the cabin.
The leopard didn't flinch. She just turned slightly, taking a labored step onto the powdery snow, and looked back at him, clearly imploring him to follow. Alex stepped out, the icy cold of the winter night instantly biting at his skin, the weight of his decision crashing down on him.
He was placing his life entirely in the paws of a desperate wild cat. This was the ultimate act of trust, or perhaps the ultimate act of foolishness. He carried nothing but his light and his resolute determination. The leopard began to move, navigating the fresh, deep snow with difficulty.
She led him away from the familiar snow-laden paths, deeper into the frosted brush,
where she would normally hide her life away. Alex followed, his eyes darting between her black silhouette and the shadows, constantly aware that at any moment, the protective instinct of a mother could override her current need.
And turn him into prey. He realized the immense risk she was taking too.
By showing him the way, she was exposing her most vulnerable moments to him. In the deadliest conditions of the year. This was a testament to the level of her pain and her faith.
That this single upright creature could provide salvation. The air was thick with tension, a silence broken only by the crunch of Alex's boots on the frozen ground. The air was thick with tension, a silence broken only by the crunch of Alex's boots on the frozen ground.
And the leopard's heavy breathing. After what felt like an eternity, the leopard stopped. They had reached a small rocky overhang, protected somewhat from the heavy snow.
An almost invisible den entrance, the kind of place leopards choose for ultimate seclusion.
And then, Alex saw the true, immediate source of the crisis. Her back paw was ensnared. Not in a malicious, sharp steel trap.
But in a heavy coil of discarded industrial fishing wire dragged from a nearby frozen waterway. The wire had tightened around her ankle, restricting movement. But more dangerously, preventing her from properly positioning herself for the birth that was clearly imminent. The pressure of the swelling womb against the snare must have been agonizing.
Her inability to fully lay down meant she risked both her life and the lives of her unborn cubs in the brutal cold.
Every shred of her instinct must have screamed at her to lash out to protect herself. But she remained still. She was counting on him.
Alex knew he only had one chance.
Any sudden movement, any perceived threat, and the pain would trigger a fatal defense mechanism.
He lowered himself to his knees on the frozen earth, moving with agonizing slowness. He pulled a small set of wire cutters from his pack.
The leopard watched him, her eyes tracking every inch of his progress.
Musk, coppers.
He was close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her. He reached out, not toward the trap, but briefly to the ground.
Then, in one fluid, deliberate motion, he reached for the tangled wire. He worked quick, almost carefully.
But held her position, displaying a level of control that was simply awe-inspiring. She understood the purpose of his hands. She knew he was helping.
Zip. The final strand of wire parted, falling silently onto the snow.
The leopard didn't leap up in relief. Instead, she took a long, deep, shaky breath.
Alex backed away, immediately, giving her space, retreating to the safety of a nearby tree root, watching anxiously back.
Within minutes, the long, quiet struggle began. The raw miracle of life unfolding in the wilderness right before his eyes. He stayed put, an unwelcome witness, but one whose presence was accepted.
Finally, after what felt like hours, Two tiny mewling sounds broke the tension.
The mother was exhausted, but her breathing was calmer now. She began the slow, tender process. The mother was exhausted, but her breathing was calmer now. She began the slow, tender process. She looked at him and performed an act of unbelievable recognition. She nudged one of her tiny It was a life saved, but more importantly, a bond forged in the most terrifying yet tender moment of her life.